the economic problem in Nigeria has got to a very high level. Since this present government came into governance, the economic situation has become very, very dire. Dire because it will appear that there was no proper planning before they introduced some reforms. These reforms were supposed to take care of the Nigerian economic situation, but it will appear that the reforms were rather an instruments of punishment than instruments of well-being. What were these reforms, you may ask? The reforms entailed a number of items, amongst which were two prominent ones. One of such reforms was the removal of subsidy on oil, on petroleum products. That removal, or put this way, there were said to be subsidies on the petroleum products that were sold in Nigeria. So the price of petroleum products were said to be cheaper in Nigeria than many other West African countries. It should be understood that Nigeria has crude oil in abundance. We are used to refined petroleum products. So because we don't have, the facility, the refineries are not working. So what they normally do is to, transfer or send these petroleum products to other countries who have the capacity to refine crude oil into refined products. So when eventually they refine, they send it to us in Nigeria, and we buy them. When we buy them, they are sold at international price. And when converted to Naira, it's usually very high. So what the government does is to subsidize the price of this petroleum product, so that when it gets down to the average Nigerian, it becomes reasonably priced. The unfortunate thing is that there were no accountability for, these subsidies that the government is spending. So government officials were just making quite a lot of money out of it. So the government was spending quite a lot on this so-called subsidy. Nobody knows how much they are spending. The government itself does not even know how much it is spending. So the thinking was that this reform would enable the, petrol to be sold at market prices. Let market prices determine what the cost of these petroleum products should be. At least that was the intention. Again, there was also the second part of the reform initiative. That second leg was an intention by government to, do away with regulation of the exchange rate. The government is said to be subsidizing the exchange rate. So when this present government came into being, they wanted to deregulate the exchange rate so that market forces can determine what you buy and sell foreign currencies. So these were the major planks of the reform process. Unfortunately, the Nigerian economy is an import-dependent one. Virtually everything that comes into Nigeria, that we use in Nigeria, are imported. So any attempt to tinker with the exchange rate will certainly affect the price of goods and services. So also with the petroleum products, any attempt to tinker with the price of, petroleum products has a far-reaching effect on the price of goods and services, because the Nigerian economy drives mainly on, road network. Movement of goods and services are done through the various road networks, and the vehicular movements are, basically facilitated by fuel, refined fuel. But because of the introduction of these reforms, the prices of petroleum products went very high, and it became difficult for the average individual to buy fuel to service their vehicles. So these two initiatives, good as they were not well managed. As a result, the inflationary level of goods and services skyrocketed. So when eventually the government decided to withdraw the subsidy that were placed on these items, every other item, the price of every other item was affected. Everything went high up. All prices skyrocketed. The moment they introduced those reforms, all prices of goods and services went up. So eventually it was difficult for the average individual to, to buy basic goods and services, because everything responded to the government's withdrawal of the subsidy placed on these goods and services. I want to remember that the Nigerian economy depends on, cheap petroleum products and, cheap exchange rates. But as soon as these reforms were introduced and the subsidies withdrawn, it became inevitable for the prices of these, for goods and services to respond to the withdrawal of these subsidies. So what happened was that it became very costly for most companies to operate, because the cost of services became very high. Most companies could not, operate normally. They could not make the required profit, and most of them had to close shops. Most of them had to, relocate. They decided to relocate. Consequently, unemployment followed, and people, were suffering because of this singular act of government. Ordinarily, the government, wanted to make things better for Nigerians, but the reforms were not properly planned. So at the end of the day, it was the people that are suffering right now. It is therefore against this background that one decides to profile some solutions to the problems. These solutions are very good ones, very genuine ones, if only people can, use them appropriately. So here are the solutions I have decided to profile to these problems. Number one, the problem is that you should not see the problem as too light. In other words, don't take any problem as too easy, because if you take any problem as too easy, it could overwhelm you. And if it overwhelms you, it's a bit difficult to take care of. So what we are saying is that you have to use every available resource at your disposal to fight the problem. If not, it could become bigger than what we are talking about. What we are trying to say could be buttressed by giving some examples. If, for instance, you have 3 cars, because a lot of people have a number of cars. If, for instance, you have 3 cars and you discover that the economy is becoming too expensive for you to maintain these 3 cars, why don't you drop or even sell 2 of them and rely on one? At least with that, the price, what you spend on fuel could be reduced. And then, if you are going to some distant places, why don't you go with public transport? We know the public transport situation is not convenient in Nigeria, but we have to manage. There is nothing we can do about it. We have to, stay afloat. Then, if you were used to eating meat before, maybe you used to eat 10 pieces of meat before in a day, you may just decide to reduce it to about 2 or 3, so as to keep going. If not, it will be difficult for you to really keep pace with the prices of goods and services. Then again, if the cost of living in some highbrow areas like Ikoyi and Victoria Land is very expensive, or is becoming too expensive, why don't you relocate? Go to places like Ajegule or Ajangbadi or the outskirts and look for houses which your pocket can take care of. You don't have to overreach yourself. The times are very hard, so we have to find ways of taking care of situations. The second solution is that you should not see the problem we are going through as the end of the world. Look, let me tell you, if for instance some businesses are closing shops and relocating, why don't you look for some other businesses to do? Oh yes, look for some other businesses to do. There are other businesses which you could do. Just look around and you will certainly get some businesses which you can do. Or you are suddenly sacked from your place of work. Do not see it as the end of the world. Look for some other things to do. Look for some other jobs to do. The fact that we are sacked from job A does not mean that you cannot look for some other jobs to do. Look for job B or C and start doing. If you don't do that, well, it becomes difficult for you to, live your life. It may just be a case of if one door closes, another door will open. That's basically life. The third solution is that you should not fold your arms and expect manna to fall from heaven. In other words, if you are sacked from your place of work, why don't you go look for another place to work? Or, the other hand, look around your environment. If it becomes too difficult, look around your environment. You may find things, you may just discover that there are 1 or 2 things which you can do to put body and soul together. Don't let that frustrate you. Don't let the fact that you are sacked from a particular job frustrate you and stop you from looking for what else to do. The third solution is that you should not just fold your arms and wait for solutions to come. The solutions may not come. Okay, you have been sacked from your place of work. You cannot just fold your arms, sit at home and do nothing. You have to go out and look for something to do, or expect the government. Are you expecting the government to come and assist you or to come to your aid? The government may not have time for you. There may be there are 101 other people like you who are looking for a job. The government cannot cater for everybody. So the best thing for you to do is to go look for something to do. Don't just wait for people to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. It is your responsibility. You have to do it yourself. Number 4 solution is that you should not increase the problem with your own hands. To sit down and do nothing and to feel bad about the system amounts to increasing the problem by yourself. Using your own hands to increase an already existing problem. The fact that a company has sacked you does not mean that you start hating everybody. It does not mean that you start hating the government or you start hating the company that sacked you. You have a duty to go look for another thing to do. Don't wait for the government. Don't wait for anybody, any other person. Because the greatest mistake people make is to just sit down and and do nothing. If you don't do anything for yourself, nobody will come to your aid. You have to find a way to do something to get, to come back to normalcy. The fifth problem is for you to think again. What exactly is the problem? Is it a financial problem? Is it a problem of expenses? Or is it an unemployment problem? If it's a financial problem, what exactly are you doing wrong? How are you managing your expenses? Are you managing your expenses correctly? If you are drinking, say, 3 bottles of beer every day when things were good, can you start drinking 1 now, or even drink nothing at all, now that things are not looking good? If it's an unemployment problem, how do you take care of it? Can you go move around your environment, move around the neighborhood, and see whether there are things you can do? At the end of the day, you may just discover that there are stuff you can do and earn some money for yourself without waiting for anybody. Number 6 solution is that it could be something that requires you take the right decision. What are we talking about? If you have been having fun all this while with the boys, going to clubs, drinking overnight, spending nights outside, what can we do to ameliorate the situation? Can we reduce our going out? Going out involves spending night out there with most of the boys, involves money. You can't be balling every time. We know it's good to move around, but you cannot be enjoying the way you were enjoying before. You may just decide to reduce the level of your enjoyment so that you can take care of a dire situation. Or do you have an outfit, an organization? Do you run an organization that is not making profit? Why don't you sit down and find out why you are not making profit, and maybe decide to take steps that would reduce whatever is causing the waste in that outfit. It may require you reducing the staff strength. It may require you reducing how much you pay to some people. Just make sure you take the right decision. Once you take the right decision, you discover that the problem is half solved, if not completely solved. The 7th solution is to think properly. Most of us, under certain circumstances, don't think aright. Most Nigerians in an unemployment problem don't ask the right questions. I was listening to one unemployed person some time ago asking a consultant what they can do to take care of this unemployment situation. You know what the consultant said, told the person? He told him to go and the consultant asked him just one question. And the question was, if you want to catch a fish, what do you do? He did not give him the right answer. The direct answer. He just asked him, if you want to catch a fish, what do you do? That was just the response the consultant gave to him. What the consultant was trying to say, in effect, or what the consultant was trying to let sink in effect, is that if, for instance, you want to catch a fish, do you go to a farm to catch a fish? Or where do you go to catch a fish? It is your responsibility to know that if you want to catch a fish, you buy a hook or a net, then go to a place where there is a river, sink your hook or net, and you'll be able to catch a fish. That is just the basic thing. He doesn't have to be, overfed. He has to think of a way out of his current problem. What I'm saying is that the 8th solution is that you could turn your lemon into a lemonade. Lemon is bitter. By the time you add some little sugar to it, it becomes a lemonade and it gets sweetened. Look at the problem very well. For inside each problem, there is some element of goods inside. Extract the goods, use them and discard the problem. Number 9 solution is that you may have to speak out. If you don't speak out, you may just be consumed by the problem. I will give you an example. Some time ago, a young lady who is doing her service in Nigeria was not having enough money. The money they were paying them was very small, and she was not able to cope. So after some time, she began to cry out and began to tell the whole world how she is suffering, how the money is not being enough to take care of her basic needs. This cry out was at the expense of, the backlash which may eventually come to her. But she was not bothered. At least she has cried out. So many government officials began to threaten her. She made national headline, and people were calling her here and there. But she was not bothered. At least she has spoken out. Do you know that eventually the government had to increase the monies they were paying to these people just because somebody decided to speak out, in spite of the backlash? But at least she has done that and has achieved her objective. So don't just keep quiet. Say something. Cry out. Somebody may just take interest in what is affecting you and solve your problem for you. The summary of it all is that you have to be positive in whatever you are doing. Negative thoughts produce negative results. You can only solve your problems if you have a positive mind. Don't have a negative mind to issues. A negative mind, entails that you become very bitter. You could be bitter to the company that sacked you. You could be bitter to the government. You could be bitter to your family because they are eating too much or they are spending too much of your money. But the fact is, if you take a positive view to life, you will discover that the problems will be overrun by you. Thank you very much for listening.